finally coming around. I was starting to think that I administered too many sedatives, but I can see my calculations were correct as always. Ah, yes. About those restraints, my apologies, but I needed you to be at my utter mercy in order for this to work. I realize this isn't exactly what you had in mind when you agreed to be my undergraduate research assistant. I may have failed to mention that your role will actually be closer to an experimental test subject rather than a technician. Oh, please, don't act so indignant. I see the way you look at me during class, you know. It's so distracting, feeling your eyes roaming all over me while I'm trying to teach. What's the name of that Van Halen song? Hot for Teacher? Or perhaps Hot for Professor would be more apropos. The point is, I know you've got the hots for me, so I'm guessing that you're probably thrilled to be my newest specimen. I saw how excited you were when I asked you to stay after class. I imagine you couldn't wait to have a one-on-one tutoring session. What's that? It's true that age is just a number, but you should still know that it's not polite to ask. If you must know, we are approximately the same age, plus or minus a few years. I happen to have graduated from high school much sooner than expected. That's the only hint you'll get out of me on the subject. I think you're capable of solving the rest on your own. Oh, really? You think I've gone too far? Would you prefer to live in a world with no cell phones, electric lighting, or heaven forbid, an air conditioner? We have a professional obligation as scientists to unlock the mysteries of the universe. How these concepts translate into practical application is not my primary concern. It's not like we're splitting the atom, although I guess some would consider the secrets of the mind as more destructive than any bomb. You might be surprised to learn that I've been gathering data on you for a while now. So it seems we have a mutual interest in each other. You call it an obsession, but it's all in the name of science, or at least, most of it is. The rest is, well, it's of personal interest to me. You've taken a few of my classes, so you should know how serious I am about my research. You basically accepted all the risk involved when you agreed to assist me. Anyway, I need some proof that my current theory is accurate. If you have a logical reason to support your beliefs, then you won't be caught with your pants down, in an academic sense at least. You may think I'm batshit crazy, but I can still see the burning desire in your eyes. It's okay. You can be honest. It's just the two of us. I can see the battle raging in your mind, caught between your sense of social priorities and your carnal urges. Your brain or your body. I wonder which one will end up on top. I can tell you're secretly enjoying the anticipation. I wonder how far I'll have to go before you reach your limit. So, let's begin with a few informal experiments and see where the results take us. First, I'll take off this lab coat. I usually never teach class without it. Oh my. Do you like what you see? Your pulse rate just shot through the roof, so there's no point in trying to hide it. You're currently connected to a plethora of sensors, so I'll be able to observe your reaction to every stimulus. However, the results of this first test fall within my expectations. Most males in your situation would have a reaction in a similar fashion. So let's chalk it up to the standard deviation. I wonder what I should try next. I usually would have written up an extensive list of experiments to perform, but I'm ashamed to admit that I'm improvising. To be honest, I was so eager to test my theory that I may have ended up rushing things a bit. Sorry, was that a little unprofessional of me? It's okay though. We have all night to figure out the correct procedure. Perhaps some tactile stimulation is called for? Oh, did you like that suggestion? I bet your mind is running wild with the possibilities. Are you aware that the epidermis of the cranium is one of the more sensitive areas of the body? Really, you've never had a head massage before? No, I'm not referring to that type of massage, you cretin. It feels pretty good though, right? Very good question. Exactly as I would expect from my star pupil. I forgot to tell you the entire reason we are doing this series of experiments in the first place. Well, in a nutshell, I'm developing a thesis about the nature of love and human happiness. Now, I'm aware that this topic is somewhat broad, so let me explain. You see, I've arrived at the conclusion that life is rather dull. It seems like I spend most of my time drifting from thing to thing, hoping to find some place where I'll belong. Typically, I either master the topic or end up growing bored and disinterested because I'm not a good fit, so I move on to the next potential source of interest. That's when it occurred to me. It seems like most people spend their time sustaining their existence for the prospect of potential happiness down the road, rather than truly appreciating the moment. After I was able to admit this to myself, I realized that true happiness only comes from sharing the joys that life has to offer with someone else. As illogical as this conclusion is from a scientific perspective, I have to admit it makes sense on an emotional level. Your neck and shoulders are so tense. Just relax a bit. I'm not going to cause you any pain, unless you're into that kind of thing. As I was saying, the law of entropy states that everything which begins must have an end, so the purpose of our lives is really determined by what we choose to do with the time we have. As human beings, we desire a meaning or purpose for our lives above all else. Therefore, we tend to try to find our unique identities in the aspects of our lives which are dealt by probability, or fate, or whatever you want to call it. Basically, the development of our individual personalities depends on random environmental factors in combination with our unique genetic profiles. You know, the old nature versus nurture theory. Despite the fact that each individual is born into differing systems of morality and social norms, I still believe that there is a common denominator when it comes to the human concept of happiness and love. Call it an X factor, something that can be defined and harnessed to bring people together. Am I boring you with my existential musings? I suppose you are correct in that regard. Rambling is a more apt description of my monologue. You may be interested to learn that you just so happen to be the one that meets all the criteria to be my perfect partner. Don't get me wrong. The idea of a soulmate doesn't hold any water for me. There is a complex system of variables which determines one's desirability to the opposite sex. A majority of these have to do with automated biological processes such as pheromones. These are basically chemical signals which tell your brain hot or not. According to my research, most people cite their senses as being the root cause of their attraction. But there is a lot more going on beneath the surface that we take for granted. This all relates back to my earlier point about a person's genetics. I'm fully aware that there is a difference between love and mere physical attraction, but I would posit that one is typically a required condition for the other, so it is a suitable origin point. However, did anyone ever tell you you have nice arms? Even though you're not a bodybuilder, your biceps are still firm and toned. What was I saying? Yes. So while I don't believe in soulmates, I do believe it's possible to find the person who best complements the psychological and biological characteristics of a given individual. The real issue is finding them. You and I were extremely lucky in that regard. For most people, the chances are about 1 in 7 billion. Or perhaps it's more like 1 in 3.5 billion since there's 2 of us. Essentially, my goal is to develop an infallible way of finding that special someone. Think of it as the ultimate dating website, one which uses genetic profiling in combination with aspects of your personality to find the one person who is most suited for you. The more difficult aspect of the study is obtaining all the parameters relating to personality and preferences. That's what our little experiments are designed to solve. A variety of tests are required in order to obtain the empirical evidence needed to support my hypothesis. You're hopelessly smitten with me, so you seem the most appropriate specimen for this evening's soiree. Actually, you were the only one I had in mind for the festivities. Most people don't like to admit that their minds and bodies are essentially chemical signals and electrical impulses, but I think there is something intrinsically thrilling about it. If you can quantify it and organize it into a system, then you can play with it. Imagine stimulating all of the pleasures the body has to offer with just a push of the button. How did I figure out that we're a good match? Well, you see, I may have obtained a sample of your DNA from an old cup you threw away. Then I compared your genetic profile to my own genome. We have a lot of complementary traits, which is probably why we are so attracted to each other. Illegal. All is fair in love and war, and science too, I suppose. I'm missing a few segments of your profile, so perhaps you'd be willing to provide an additional DNA sample? Perhaps we can discuss that a bit later on. For now, let's continue your physical examination.